Well, good morning, folks. Big welcome to you to the TC16 event. Thanks very much for taking the time and trouble to join us here in wonderful Austin. We are very, very happy to have Ashley with us, Ashley Hall from the University of Las Vegas. And she tells me that librarians are really not dull people. So please party with your data while you're here in Austin. Really have a good time. So Ashley has been using Tableau for about 3 years, and for the past 8 months she's also been using Tableau Server. So very pleased to hear that, Ashley. She uses Tableau for the general operation of the library and also monitoring content usage. So Ashley, over to you. But before I do that, one favor to ask. At the end, there is a Q&A, and when you ask a question, could you wait for us to hand you this microphone, because this session has been recorded and will be available on the web at a later stage. So we just want to make sure that we capture your question correctly. So without further ado, Ashley, over to you.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad you're here. So title, Gateway Data, Visualizing Survey Data, helps foster a culture of assessment at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We're going to talk a little bit about the survey data. This is more of a process presentation. I will show you some workbooks, but we're going to talk more about our process from going from one tiny Tableau user to server in a couple of years. Actually, I have a thing. Okay. So this is a story of how the UNLV libraries went from grudgingly reporting data only when it was required to being actually excited, genuine excitement about the data process. This particular quote means a lot to me. I start most of my presentations with a quote, but not everything that counts, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. This story is about the feelings of the people that had to do this, the commitment that we had to make to get to Tableau Server and actually caring about our data. And that can't be counted or quantified or analyzed or visualized in a simple way. I'm really hoping that it can be replicated, and that by telling this story, it can be replicated in your organizations. So about me, I have a bachelor and master's of social work from UNLV, and I'm currently a PhD student studying public policy and leadership. I'm a data analyst, and on the side I do some human services consulting, although I do it all for free, so I don't know if that counts as consulting. And I have a passion for data and its uses, and that is probably what landed me the job at UNLV Libraries. Social workers usually don't handle data. Most social work students hate their statistics course and just try to get through it. I, on the other hand, really liked it. And it turned out I'm really, really, really bad at counseling because I hate it when people cry in front of me. So I focused on the social or the data aspect of it and improving social services and human services with data. The UNLV Libraries, at the time of my graduation, was on the cusp of major change in their data collection and reporting process. We have a visionary for a leader in our dean. So when they put the job out, they wanted somebody that could not only handle the complex data landscape, but the complex social landscape that existed there too. So I was kind of lucky. I was trained as a negotiator, a facilitator, a translator, and that really helped. And they saw that that was a helpful skill to get from data that was siloed and departments and branches that were separated to a unified force that actually cared about data. I forgot to start my timer. So this particular workshop, we're going to talk about the plan that I had when I was hired, what actually happened, which, by the way, did not go to plan at all, the challenges and the solutions that we encountered when trying to make this transition to a data-driven culture of assessment, and where the libraries are going now and where we're going in the future, hopefully. So about the UNLV libraries, plural, we have 4 branches. The main UNLV branch, it's very large. It's the center of the campus. It competes with the Thomas and Mack Sports Center as far as size and volume. So on the slower months, we probably see around 200,000 visitors a month. On the busier ones, upwards of 450,000 people come into our main branch. We have 3 smaller branches that are centered around academic focus, so an architecture library, a music library, and a teacher development and resource library that used to be curriculum materials library. I still struggle with that acronym. Our library is made up of academic, professional, classified, and student staff. When you add them all together, we ought to have 150. And when I say academic, I mean tenured faculty. Our libraries are tenured faculty members. We serve UNLV and the broader community with research support services, of course, access to resources for research. It's not, oh, there it goes. So UNLV libraries, I've found, I did not realize this, I don't have a library background, is kind of unique in that we actually have a dedicated assessment unit. So we have an assessment, a head of assessment, that's all she does is assessment. Then we have someone underneath that, that's the analyst, and I have a student worker underneath me who is amazing, by the way. So if she hears this, Ashley, you're fantastic. And yes, her name is Ashley, and that was not intentional. So why I was hired, I know that I already explained my skill set, but I was hired with 3 very specific goals that were listed. I need to foster the culture of assessment. I didn't even know what they were talking about, but I said, sure, I can do that. We had a tool called a data matrix, and it was an administrative tool that I'm going to talk about in a little bit that needed updating. So that was one of my first major projects. And start to visualize data. They found out that I liked doing that, and they were looking to go in that direction. They had actually already purchased 1 license for Tableau desktop. Nobody had started to use it. They didn't really have time to learn it. So I was supposed to start visualizing data. So my plan, I get hired, they give me these 3 things, and I decide I'm going to look at the data matrix first. So this is the data matrix. It's super pretty. It was just a basic Excel spreadsheet. The tabs down here are separated by these data groups or themes, and it just had information, right? This was used by 2 people in the organization, the dean and the head of assessment, to get a grasp on what, yes, exactly, on what data we collected. When I looked at it, I was confused. I didn't know what the shading was. I didn't know what, it was even worse that I didn't know what a microform was, or a microfiche. No idea what that is still. I gave up on trying to understand the difference. So everything about this confused me. I was lost, and I hated it, and I wanted to cry. The data matrix it came about because of these key problems that I've listed here. The data requirements of the library became really complex. There were a bunch of organizations that needed data from us. The provost and the president of the university needed data from us, and it started to get a little out of control. So the data matrix was there to it was a 2007, I think. It was this quick, let's try to see if we can figure this out attempt. We had trouble tracking everything, and really a lot of trouble replicating the data annually. And this was the first attempt to try to fix that problem. Hopefully by having some sort of roadmap, we can figure it out. But again, this was mainly an administrative tool. It was only used by a couple of people in the organization, so it really wasn't anything that went beyond just administrators. So my goals to update this, meet with each department. I wanted to explore the data. The data matrix included data that's collected from every single department at the library. So I wanted to explore that and find out what was going on. And as I did those meetings, I would update the data matrix as needed. From there, I was going to explore the data collection process and needs, and maybe hopefully kind of fix some of that if there were problems or frustrations. I was going to start collecting, reporting, and sharing library data. That's what I was really stoked about. I'm an analyst, so I want to do that. And somewhere along the way, I was hoping that a culture of assessment would kind of just fall into place. Again, no idea how I was going to do culture of assessment. It made no sense to me. Here's what actually happened. Those meetings that I went to were vent sessions, and that is it. They were vent sessions, 2 hours long. First, they were really suspicious. Like, what do you even want from us? We already give you what you need. Leave me alone. But then when I started asking questions, that's when the complaints started coming out. There was the main complaint, the process was ambiguous, and they were very frustrated reporting requirements. Everyone was annoyed with, why are we doing this? What is it for? Where do we put it? Everything about it was frustrating. Inconsistent data collecting and reporting was a huge problem at our library. If we have something that we have to report to ACRL or IPEDS that we only do once a year, every year it was like relearning how to report that piece of data. It was very, very frustrating. And we had different places that we stored the data. So I had one provider that had to put data every month into 3 different systems for assessment to pick up on. It was very challenging and very frustrating. Some of the data was meaningless. I have a good example of that. We track the number of times somebody logs into the library's website. We track it if they did it on mobile, they did it on their the campus wireless network or one of the other computer labs, and also if they logged into the website with UNLV library computers. The problem is we're defaulted to that website on our library computers. And yet we were reporting that number like, look how many times people look at our website. It was a meaningless statistic, and it was disingenuous. So we had a lot of frustration there, and that was not the only example. And I think the biggest problem, and I think this is where it started to click what a culture of assessment means to me, is the people who were reporting the data didn't see a noticeable benefit in their work. They would report numbers because somebody told them to report them, and they didn't really get to see the fruits of their labors. So this was a really big problem, and somewhere I thought that we could actually start improving things. This thing doesn't like to work. Okay, one other thing that we got in the meetings, though, that I was really happy about was the ideas and hopes of the staff. As soon as we started talking about the process, they realized that there could be a dual benefit to the data collected by assessment. Maybe it's not just used for assessment purposes. Maybe I can use it for my internal reports, my decision making, my staffing, stuff like that. It really could be useful and, again, foster that culture of assessment. Once I started talking about data visuals, everybody got really excited. They could use that in their publications, and especially if you think about special collections. They're a very huge resource in libraries for the community, for researchers outside of the university. If they could start putting beautiful visuals in their publications, that'd be fantastic. Better understanding of what is needed, why, and where it goes. If they understood the process, they felt like they would be more invested in it. And these are the kinds of things I learned at all these meetings. So I had a new vision for the data matrix. After all of these meetings, probably took about 3 months or so to actually meet everyone and get more acclimated to my position. I realized that the data matrix could be more than just an administrative tool. It could be a roadmap that actually helped data providers do their jobs, helped in training, helped when there's turnover. That made the update project huge. It went from something that they thought I would get done in a couple of months to, hey, how about 2 years for this project? And I had some actually really good response to that. By including everyone, not only in the data matrix update project, but in the data visualization process and everything that followed, we would really start to foster that culture. Everyone's involved now, everyone's invested now. And by incorporating data visuals and a data visual pitch whenever I talked about the data framework or the data matrix, and data collection training, we can again start to build the skill set and get everyone on board. So let's talk about the challenges once I started this process. These are the main challenges that I actually wrote down. I had a little list. What is the data matrix? I knew what the data matrix was. The dean did. The head of assessment knew what it was. Every time I said data matrix, everyone glossed over or asked me what it was, even though it's a tool that's been used since 2007. Everyone thought it was a place where we stored all the data. That's not what it was, and I had to explain that. And even trying to explain it, it still didn't work out. There was inconsistencies in the process, as I discussed. Data reporting was confusing and cumbersome. Visual data was a very scary concept for our library. And sharing the data during this whole process, I realized, was doomed to failure. We were sharing it via PDF reports or Excel reports. People had different versions floating around. Everything about it was a hot mess. So that was something that had to be incorporated into my plan. So let's go. I'm going to talk about all the solutions to each of these challenges individually. So the data matrix. When somebody asked me what the data matrix is, I usually said, I don't know. And eventually got to the point with, how about we rename this and have it make sense? And names are very important. We came up with the data framework. And the data framework, by definition, is a structure. It's a supporting structure. So by renaming this tool and explaining to people that this is not somewhere the data is housed, this is not an administrative tool, this is the framework, this is the structure that's going to guide you in your data collection and reporting process. It really helped kind of solidify the concept of a data framework in everybody's mind, and they started to get a little bit more excited about it. Social scientists and librarians love logic models and flowcharts, so I made one. This is our data framework model. Oh, so I'm switching data matrix now, data framework, just so you know. A lot of the elements that were in the original matrix are here, such as collection frequency, category, department, but we expanded it to include a lot more. And we kind of grouped everything. So we have providers, descriptors, and process. And then there's these other factors. Hopefully this is something that can help a lot of individuals figure out what they need to figure out before they actually start collecting data. So once we kind of had an idea of what we wanted out of the framework, we started to work on those inconsistencies with the data reporting within the framework. So the format, again, included the original elements, but we put a new emphasis on definitions and procedures. Every data point, okay, let's go back. Every data category has a definition. So if I say collections, we define what we mean by collections. And then we can go down into subcategories. If I say collections and then ebooks, we define what we mean by ebooks. What does ebook mean? And those definitions can vary based on which organization wants the data. So we'll have duplicates in our background data that have, you know, if you filter by ACRL, the definition might be a little bit different, especially with like GovDocs and things like that. And then going further, again, the piece of data. So if I want the count, the collection count of electronic books, that's also defined. And the best part, I think, the most beneficial part of this is the procedures. This wasn't just, you get it from this vendor kind of instructions. These are step by step. Sometimes they're 12 or 13 steps listed very, very specifically. This is the database you log into. This is the login information. This is the report you click on. Sometimes as far as it's in the top left corner of the website. All of that procedure that really helps with that inconsistency in the data reporting process. But once we got all of this, the framework itself was huge. You know, it's an Excel spreadsheet, so easy to connect with Tableau. But it was an Excel spreadsheet, it had like 800 rows of data, especially because we had to duplicate some of them if the definition was slightly different for a different organization. So how to present it became a new challenge in the middle of the process. Tableau wasn't even on my mind during the data framework update project. But as soon as we got to the point of here's our framework, how are we going to present it? We tried Excel, we tried a Google site, we tried another website application. None of it worked for what we needed. Tableau became our solution, and I'm going to show you that really quickly. So this became our data framework. Those main category, subcategory, and data points became the basic visual, and all those other factors are not absent, they're now filters. So if I'm a data provider and I want to know what I'm responsible for, all I have to do is filter by my name. Or if I'm the dean and I know that ACRL is coming up, or some survey, maybe the president of the university is, you know, asking for something, I can filter by that requester, that person or that entity that requested the data, and see what's required for that requester. So this made this tool, it moved it from an administrative only to now the providers themselves will find this very, very useful. But the most popular aspect of this is that these are filters. All the data points are filters that will bring you to the procedures and definitions dashboard. So if you don't know what something is, if you're brand new to the organization and you're asked to report some data and you have no idea what an ebook is or a count of an ebook is, it'll take you there. And you can see this is actually our patron contacts consultations. So we know what a consultation is. We know what the subcategory is, which is an electronic consultation, and the procedure for getting the numbers for that. Okay, so we have our framework. We have our tool that we're presenting it in. And there wasn't a lot of pushback with Tableau for the tool. I was surprised. They were all very comfortable with it. And I think that got me in a position to think they're going to love everything with Tableau. So we had to kind of start tackling the data reporting because, again, that was confusing and cumbersome. Since I was already on board with Tableau, I thought this is a really good time to change all of our data sources into Tableau-friendly sources. A lot of the data was already stored in Excel, except the data that they were giving to us was sometimes aggregate data. So like our visit data. I would get one number every month for the number of people who came into the library. But our system was capable of giving me numbers by the hour. So they were giving me one number every month, and we didn't have to change the way they reported. We eliminated the way they reported. So instead of putting numbers in manually into a database system, they just gave me the raw data file straight from the vendor. And that's the case with a lot of it. In situations where numbers come from paper surveys or something, we had to set up Excel worksheets. But again, really simple process of just entering the numbers. We used some Excel filters and stuff and hiding rows and columns to make it easier for everyone. But all of that ended up turning into our data sources. We don't have anything that, we use, how many are librarians in here? No, a couple. Have you heard of Millennium? Yeah, so we're working on getting a new system. So we really didn't try to even connect directly to Millennium. If you are connecting directly to your database, I cannot help you right now. But most of our data was in Excel or was easily placed into Excel, so that kind of simplified the transition to Tableau. The end result to all this was a Tableau-ready data source for me and a simplified process for providers. Everyone was happy to have everything in one folder on one spreadsheet. It made everybody very, very, very happy. So everybody thinks that there's change is going to be hard, and it turns out this was actually easier. So visualizing data, and this is where we're going to get into how we started to really sell Tableau in our organization. Visual data was a really scary concept for people in the library. We have a lot of old school librarians who love their crosstabs and long textual reports. Not that they're bad, I love them too, but moving into something different was hard. But at this point in the process, I'm like, everybody loves the framework, everybody loves Tableau, awesome, I'm gonna go forward with it. So we have a library pulse survey. This is done every single year. This survey is for librarians and staff. We ask about how they feel in the library, how they're doing, do they feel discriminated against, all these kinds of questions to measure the kind of health of the organization. And this helps the dean with training, with anything else that needs to be done. So results in 2014 of this survey were presented like this. Raw data, counts, not even raw, counts, and comments. So at this point, I had a new head of assessment, and she was on board with us. She had like an art history major, so she was fantastic. We decided to visualize this data. Let's take it, visualize it, send it out. It'll be awesome. This is what we came up with. This is one page of it. Same survey, except now we can see very quickly where we excel and where we're struggling. I thought it was awesome. I love the colorblind scheme. I always use those. But it was not well received. A lot of people wanted to see, and this is there's tool tips you can you can hover over and see exactly the number of respondents, all that kind of stuff. We can filter. This one isn't filterable, but you can filter by department where there were enough respondents. If there weren't enough respondents, we would leave that filter off. But as soon as we sent it out to administration, they said, we want the original format. We want something like this. And I think I cried and died a little. Because this is just what comes out of the survey software. It's not even anything I did. I was sad. We compromised with this. The textual report, executive summary with some visuals mixed in there. And what we learned here, the biggest takeaway here is we have to know your audience. And I made some assumptions that since they liked the Tableau version of the framework, they would like this too. And I had to take a few steps back. And this was a big moment for both me, but also my head of assessment, because we weren't sure what this meant. Did this mean that all of our work on Tableau up to this point is not going to even work? It's not going to be usable? So it was a big deal for us, a couple of weeks of kind of sadness. So even though some people liked it, they were still really afraid of it. So we decided to shift gears and look for a report that is used just for the sake of needing the numbers. We used special collections, and we also went to just one department. So this is something that the whole library is invested in, right, the pulse survey. We need to go a little bit smaller. We went to something that one department needs. I think I have, yeah. So special collections visits are different than library visits. People have to sign in. And this sign-in information is put into a spreadsheet. And this is actually kind of fake data, but this is exactly what it has. Date, the subject of the research, time in, time out, and the total time. And then I added this little thing because sometimes people would not put a timeout, so I took the average of all the timeouts for like last year or something and created a formula to get the timeout if it wasn't entered. What would happen with this data is every single month, the head of the special collections would want to see the number of people that came, the times that they came for staffing purposes, and the average amount of time that they spent in the library, in the special collections unit. So we had this, I ended up creating an Excel spreadsheet for them long before I started playing with Tableau, had like every month on a tab, so they can go to it and it all calculates. And then they loved having each fiscal year in a different Excel workbook, so it was kind of everywhere. And by the end of it, they had 20 of them. So one day, without permission, just for funsies, I created this for them. Connected to the same exact data, no formatting needed, no changes in their way they processed, but now we can filter by month. And we can see whichever month you want to see, but at the same time, you can see the whole year at the same time. And eventually years worth of data once I talk them into it. Turns out they liked it. They loved it. They loved the ability of seeing the whole year as a snapshot, but also filtering down when they needed to. So starting with one department and one data source kind of bolstered my spirits about the use of Tableau. And it made me realize I just needed to start a little bit smaller and go a little bit further. So we had a baseline at this point. Here's what the organization can handle. Let's see where we can go from there. We decided to do, since that worked out well, and we presented it in a meeting, we decided to do a Tableau exploratory session. Have you ever heard of Ithaca? Ithaca is a big, huge survey we did. It's a user survey. This goes out to all of the campus, so research, faculty and staff, students, graduate, undergraduate, and we did all 3 populations. And it's big, it's a lot of data. The original report that we got from Ithaca, and it's fantastic, don't get me wrong, is like this. So just some crosstabs, some basic visuals, but it was 112 pages long. And that's just for one population. We got one report for each population. We have over 300 pages of report. I'm an analyst in the library, and my head of assessment is the head of assessment, and we didn't want to read this. So we can't imagine that anyone else would want to read this either. So we had a problem, and we decided that maybe, this is a survey we do every 3 years. People are excited, but not as invested in something that they do all the time. So let's try to visualize this. And I'm going to pause for a second and actually show you a dashboard. See if that worked. Woohoo. Okay, so what we did is we visualized it, but I think the most exciting part of this is the Ithaca survey was fantastic. It broke questions down into themes, but the themes didn't make sense for us, for our strategic plan, or for our liaison work, our research services, anything like that. So we took the questions and we broke it down into themes that made sense for us. So collection format made sense for our collection department. But also we have now these filtering options, filtering by different departments. Same with the questions. We took questions from the survey. Like we had a question that asked, this is faculty, what's your primary responsibility in the university? Research, teaching, or both? So we used those questions as filters as well. So our research services librarians can look at just the faculty who are interested in research or who that's their primary responsibility. And even better, liaisons who are responsible for particular departments could now pick, this is really hard to do, just one department, and look at the results. So what we did was we took this and this visualization of all of our survey data, we put it in a computer lab and Tableau Reader on all the computers with this, loaded it all up, and invited anyone who wanted to play with Tableau to come in and play with it. It was about a 2-hour, maybe an hour and a half session, unscripted. We just talked in the beginning, said this is the survey, these are the results, we did something fun, play with it, and tell us what you think. Every once in a while we'd prompt with some questions like, did anybody see anything interesting by department? Or did anybody see anything interested by population? And we kind of just started that conversation. Let me pop back into My PowerPoint here. So what the result of this exploration station was genuine enthusiasm for Tableau. And it went beyond Tableau, beyond just enthusiasm. We had 4 or 5 appointments right away with liaisons saying, I want to look at it by this and this, and they wanted to look at different visuals and look at different questions together. So they were excited about it, and they already knew that they could use it in their jobs. That was a huge revelation for us in the assessment department. People were gaining a new respect for visualized data. Once they realized how quickly they can process what they were looking at, they started to respect the process. They understood the importance of communicating the data. We gave them copies, paper copies of this gigantic Ithaca report, and said, find the same conclusions in this report. And they realized that they probably couldn't, or it would take a very long time to do so. And staff started to get involved, asking questions. We had staff downloading trial versions of Tableau on their computers, being very excited, downloading Reader and asking if we had other visualizations ready for them to look at. So staff really started to get excited about this. All right, so now, okay, so in this point of the process, everybody's excited. We're thinking about going into Tableau for all of our reporting needs. Sharing became very, very challenging. I knew about this 5 steps back. But I wasn't going to say, hey, let's get server and spend the money on it 5 steps back. So once we started to get that buy-in, I was able to start communicating, especially with my head of assessment, that we needed a new system. We have these data reports, and sure, I can share PDF copies, or I can share packaged workbooks for Reader, but Tableau updates a lot, and Reader is out of date quickly. It's hard to get staff sometimes to use their calendar, let alone update Tableau Reader every 3 months. What we really wanted was something that separated the background data, which Tableau will give us that option, make sure nobody accidentally deletes a column. Updates that are automatic or live, even better, and did not require extensive training or local copies of the data. I was so sick of copies of the data. And Tableau Server was our answer for that, and it was a huge campaign to try to get everybody to do this. But Tableau Server was perfect for us. So I think that leads into where are we now? So we're expanding our base of Tableau power users, what we call power users. I think I was probably the first to really start using Tableau very quickly. Our business manager jumped on board. We got formalized training in Tableau. So we had 2 power users in the library. Then we got my new head of assessment, 3 power users, and now we have 4 or 5 people that actually want to learn not just how to look at Tableau, but how to use it to make their own visuals. So our base of power users is growing, and we're creating more and more visuals, and I'm going to give you some examples of that now. So our institutional repository at the UNLV, I think most libraries or all libraries have an institutional repository that's data specific to their institution. So these are publications by our faculty. You could even have sports brochures. A lot of theses and dissertations are in here. And this is what we used to report. I know it's a little squished. I'm sorry about that. We broke down the data, and I'd never seen the data source for this. I just got these numbers from someone else. I had no idea if they were accurate or not. We broke them down by these categories, and we reported how many downloads we had per month. And then I did add this in the next year so we can see the trend over the years. That's all it was. However, and let me pause this again and get into the dashboard, it turns out once I got my hands on the raw data source, I found out that it was crazy huge. It had so much information in it, not just these downloads. This is downloads by publication type. So we broke them down in the same category. However, this is over all of the years. Now we can filter by publication type and by year if we want to see a specific year. So whereas before we'd see one report with 1 year only, this is going to show all of them in one thing, and you can then break down by year if you wanted to. Going a little bit further here, and this was very helpful to find out who's using the institutional repository in UNLV. We break it down by college. We had no option to do that before. We also found some fun errors in our institutional repository when we visualize the data. This is something we would have never realized before. And as soon as we popped, I mean, it's like two things, one of the dimensions, rows and columns, and what the heck is happening? And we found out that this is a big problem. We also found that some of our labeling, there was a lot of labeling errors, and we were able to really see that UNLV versus other authors. I would hope that this would be the case in our institutional repository. We have more UNLV authors. So here we are drawing real conclusions from our data that we weren't drawing before. We were just, here's our institutional repository. Yes, people are using it. That's all we were answering before. And now we're able to dig into that data. And people got really stoked about that. So let me go back into the PowerPoint and see where I am next. Actually, I'm going to go straight into my next dashboard. This is where I think this is where we started to use the data for decision making, I think. This is our hourly heat map. I don't usually like scroll bars in my visuals, but we actually needed this for a particular reason. So remember how I told you before that we would only look at data on a monthly basis for visits to the library. But our system, we have a camera system that counts the number of heads that come in, can actually show us to the hourly level the number of people who came in. So this is spring break, so it looks really tiny, but if you scroll over to the main bulk of the library, this is going to help with staffing. This is going to help with, we actually used this to argue for more facility support to the university. We only had like one janitor that came in twice a day, and we were able to say that, hey, we really need somebody to come in a little bit more often than that. This is how many people we have coming in 1 hour. These are the time periods again, but we even have a way to break it down by which door they came in. So we told the facilities people, hey, thanks for sending new people. Can you focus on these bathrooms? They're right next to this door. And this is all just done by the data. It's a really neat way to look at the data. And let me look at my next dashboard for you. Yeah, I'm going to have to switch to the PowerPoint. So budget defense. This is not created by me, so I barely know anything. UNLV is the orange, and we were able to see, we're not high up there. We're not asking for too much money. This is our peers. This is our cohort. It was a fantastic way to start defending our budget requests. I'm sorry, here, picture. And this is my favorite, because it's UNLV, gaming, right? Let me pull up the actual report. It's fun. There we go. So this is a gaming report that we have published on our website now. You can find it. It has a whole bunch of data, years and years and years worth of data. This is a PDF. It's not available in Excel. So if you're a researcher and you want this data to do analysis, it's going to be super fun getting that data out, right? Gaming was resistant. We have a lot of data on our gaming website, and transitioning to Tableau was very scary. So we struggled with that, but we did end up with a fun dashboard, I think. And this was just a tester dashboard for them that kept some of the executive summary stuff in there, some of the textual stuff, but started to visualize this data. I have no idea. Oh, this is 3-card poker, so it's getting, but what is Baccarat? I live in Las Vegas, and I don't know what that is. But the revenue share by game of Baccarat went way up in 21. These are the kinds of things you couldn't see when you just look at the numbers. So we kind of just played with this data and showed them that you can do fun things with this. And what's really fun about publishing it in a Tableau version is researchers can download the entire workbook and the data set. It's public data anyway. It's what they use it for. Why not give it to them in an actual usable format? I'm getting ready to start my dissertation, and if I'm doing HIPAA data, if they had this in this format, I would be so happy. But they don't, so I'm going to spend a lot of time doing it. All right. I'm kind of breezing through. I'm sorry. We might have to just have a conversation at the end. So where are we now? We're, again, expanding our base of Tableau Power users. We're pushing to get more and more people interested. We're starting to develop trainings for people who actually want to work on assessment. We're creating more and more visuals every day, and we're getting a growing request for specialized reports, which is really, really fun and kind of the proof that we need that people are actually invested in this process. We're transferring visuals to server and beginning our server training. We have Tableau server with 25 licenses right now. So 25 users, we kind of put the higher level decision makers on server first. And we're putting all of our visuals there and starting to encourage people to go, instead of saying, hey, can you give me that visual and me emailing a copy, pointing them in the direction of server. Here's the server, here's the file, you can find it. What's really fun is once they do that, they start to play with other visuals. So we're getting there. It's a slow process. Take your time, it's fine. And where are we going? This is our goal. We're heading toward a culture, not just of assessment, which I think we really are there now. We're heading toward a culture of self-assessment now. So the plan is to create first a Tableau request system. If they have a request for a dashboard with data, they request it from assessment. That's first step. Second step is to start creating data sources with built-in calculations and everything that will actually help them make their own decisions so they can start creating their own visuals. We want to start intensive training. So not just here's how to use Tableau, here's what a workbook is, here's what a worksheet is. We want intensive training on which visuals work best, how to use it, the interface, all that kind of stuff. We're going to grow our Tableau Power user base. I know that my vision was that every single division head is a Tableau Power user. And then underneath them, every department head is a Power user. That's my hope. And then we're sharing our journey. This is the last conference of the year that I'm presenting on Tableau, but I've presented at library conferences alongside my head of assessment. We've written articles about this, especially the data framework. And I'm starting to branch out. I presented at a social work conference, how to use Tableau. I've done a couple of demos on Tableau. So sharing our journey is probably the most important because we want to see all libraries going in this direction. You know, especially libraries at universities. We should be on the cutting edge of this kind of technology. And hopefully by sharing our journey, we can get them there. Wrap up what we learned. A little early, but hopefully we can talk about it. Creating a culture assessment is actually pretty hard. Even defining a culture of assessment is hard. And moving away from the norm is very scary, especially if your organization is used to textual reports and crosstabs only. If you do want to change your organization, go slow. Start with a smaller project, start with one department, maybe create a small exploratory committee, just start small. When you introduce concepts, it really helps to introduce them in a safe exploratory learning environment. Instead of saying, hey, you know that survey you look at every single year? Here is it, it's a new format, enjoy it. Start small, start safe, and it will help. And once you have the trust, support, and buy-in, go nuts. And that's what we're doing now. We're going nuts with Tableau. Everything we do is Tableau now. It's kind of bizarre. I want to end with another quote. Once we know something, we find it hard to imagine what it's like to not know it. And that is really the case at UNLV libraries. We're really struggling with how did we even survive without Tableau? All right, and remember, if you have questions, we're going to pass a mic around. So I think there's one back there.
I did have a quick question. I came into your workshop because we do have a whole bunch of surveys. We're not a library, but in our university, we do a lot of surveys, and you kind of showed us an example of one big, the Ithaca survey.
Yeah.
How much time did you spend actually doing that? Because our biggest issue is we're not going to put 94, survey items in a Tableau dashboard. Yeah. So how did you decide to do it the way you did?
Well, first let me ask, where's your data, survey data? Is it in like Excel or something? Or is it paper?
It depends. Sometimes it's SPSS, sometimes it's Excel, and then it comes out, the raw data that we get from these third-party vendors are sometimes really clunky looking too, so we end up spending an enormous amount of time cleaning the data. And then on top of that, we attempted to try to create a Tableau dashboard, but then it just wasn't like executing well.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering what you did for troubleshooting and
Surveys are weird. Just weird in general. Surveys are hard to analyze. And I present on surveys because most people don't know how to do it. It takes, so you know how data in Tableau likes it long instead of wide, so you have to duplicate your individual responses down. Once you get the hang of it though, it's not too bad. I know with Ithaca, it's different. We had like, I think the survey took 45 minutes to complete. It's a huge amount of data. But once we figured out how to format the data And we were doing a lot of work by hand in Excel. And we realized that that's not the best way to do it. If we do it in Tableau, just pivot everything, we're able to do it really quickly. But what I wanted with my survey data is all of the survey questions in one column and all of the answers, responses in another. And then you use the question as a filter. So you filter out only the question you want. And then when you put question and response into the rows and columns, only those questions will pop up with the responses. That's the best way to do it, I think. But you have to make sure that data that you want to use as filters, like demographic data specifically, stays out as independent columns. So don't pivot those down. Just leave those the way they are. And that was probably the best way to do it. But once we figured it out, because I took a Tableau survey workshop. Are you doing a survey workshop here? You should, if you can. Do the Winning Big with Survey Data workshop. It's good. But I figured out how to do it when you have bigger surveys, separating the data into like tabs for the type of question, like multiple response or yes, no, doesn't work. You want to keep it all in one place. If it's bigger survey, it's a smaller survey, that makes it a lot easier, because then your dimensions are broken down by the type of question. But yeah, you're using your question as your filter, so you can look at all of your question data. I think we have one right over here.
I'm from Virginia Tech Libraries.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll just limit myself right now. Same problem, lots of silos, and you have a lot of Excel spreadsheets. And to me, now that I've used Tableau a little bit, I see part of the problem is that, your rows don't constitute like a record. Basically, you have these spreadsheets where you have a column heading as 2012, 2013, 2014. So how did you go about getting people to restructure that data so that you could actually go about using Tableau for this?
That was tough. A lot of the times we worked around it by just getting the raw reports from the vendors, and that helped. And then we just reshape it as necessary. If we couldn't work around it, we just took charge and told them, this is how you're entering the data now. So we made sure that all of our data sources were as Tableau friendly as possible. Now you can't do the reshaping ahead of time though, because they're not going to go and search through 1,000 rows of data to find where they need to enter a number if you are entering into Excel. So we do the pivoting in Tableau. So if you can help it, so my kind of rule of thumb with data is if you're going to be adding data every month, pivot in Tableau, because then your data source stays the same, and Tableau automatically adds it all and updates it yourself. So it was really a matter of getting those raw reports, because they're almost always Tableau ready. I mean, there's a little bit of pivot necessary, and maybe some renaming, but they were all pretty good. Like Elsevier and our ebook stats and everything, those are great for Tableau already. Our institutional repository data, we don't have to do anything to that. It's perfect. It's already ready. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can get them from those vendors, they look much better than what we were doing before. We'd have collections take it and put it in a new format. Yeah, but it's easy to, like I said, if you can learn how to do the reformatting within Tableau, your work is a lot less. Way back in the back, she had her hand up way.
Hello, very
Hi.
good. I'm from UNLV as well, but in the
hi.
business college. And my question is, I'm so happy to see the library doing this, and I know Patty, or I've met her before, and the dean. And are you guys sharing your story with other colleges across campus? And because I think they would really benefit, for instance, like the bookstore struggles. I'm sure the Lee Business School would love to see. So have you guys thought about that, or where are you at in that process in sharing the story of success?
Well, I think we did a couple of open houses, which, only so many people come to those, and they kind of dug the survey data. But I think that that's a good idea that we need to start doing. I honestly didn't know anybody else was interested in Tableau at UNLV, so yay. That's kind of exciting. So no, we're not doing that as much. And I know that UNLV and most universities are pretty scared about putting stuff on public. Eventually we want to put it on public, put it on our website, embed it, and start really kind of digging into it. But I'm going to bring that up. Maybe look at one of the behind the lines in the next couple of months. Hopefully we'll see something in there. Thanks. Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Obi. Is this too loud?
No, it's good.
Okay. And I'm from Harvard. So I'm from this office in Harvard. It's called Coach. So what we do is we survey other institutions and we provide a platform for them to see how they compare to other institutions. So I am the technical person in the department, and I've started using Tableau. And the problem I run into is what we call in the office the problem of n is less than 5, where you have a set of attributes that you want to aggregate but when you do that, you find that the number of respondents is not up to 5. And in the office, the people that design the reports, my bosses, they tell me if it's less than 5, replace it with n is less than 5. So I do that easily with Python. I'm a programmer. But with Tableau, I'm wondering, because we're trying to move some of our stuff to Tableau, I'm wondering whether you ran into that kind of problem, and if you did, how did you solve it?
I did not. Whenever we had problems in our survey where there was fewer respondents than we would like that might damage confidentiality, we would just remove filters, So if we had in one department only 2 people answered, we would take out that filter. We wouldn't let them filter by department. However, we have run into a lot of problems, and tech support at Tableau is unbelievably wonderful. So what I recommend is, because I'm not very technical, most of what I've done is self-taught aside from the workshops that I've done at Tableau. And I probably contacted them once a month. They're fantastic. So they can figure things out for you. I would have to point you in that direction. Sorry. Right here.
Hi, I'm Emily from the Association of Schools and Programs of Public Health.
Okay.
And I use Tableau dashboards to provide data requests to hundreds of people every year. So I'm wondering who will be requesting Tableau dashboards? What are they requesting them for, and how long will it take you to turn that request around?
Well, what's fun about the requests that we've already been getting are mainly from our liaisons. Liaisons work with specific departments in the university, so they provide services and they're specialized. We have an engineering liaison and a fine arts liaison, and we've gotten requests from them for the most part to help do their job. We have how many requests from this department for this journal or something, stuff like that will really help. Or the survey data, how are our engineering staff looking at stats? What are they doing with their data? Storage, maybe we can start helping there. So right now it's a very informal request process. People just email us. What's fun about it is we already have the data in Tableau. If it's a survey that we've already done, the turnaround's minutes sometimes. It's just a matter of putting a different filter on for them. So you're not building a dashboard? Sometimes we do, especially for the dean. She'll ask questions that are budget related or very specialized, and we'll build a dashboard. But since we're working on getting all of our data sources Tableau ready, it's really quick. It's still drag and drop. It's still Tableau. So and you look like a magician. I had a colleague here at the reception last night who was talking about that. He had a dashboard filtered by one department. Here's what it looks like for this department, and he got a request. I'm sorry to do this to you. I don't want to overwork you, but can we do this for each department? And he's like, sure, I can do that. All he did was move the filter, and he looked like a magician. So really the turnaround, I think, is pretty quick. The only time that it's not is when we have to customize a data source or do a lot of cleanup. But because we're starting with the data sources themselves, I think we're heading off a lot of those problems. So a lot of that data is getting dumped into a Tableau-ready place. The turnaround is very, very quick for us, a couple of days. But again, we want to move to self-assessment. We want to get them data sources. Oh, here's how you do it. Just drag this to this, and then it's just a phone conversation, and they do it themselves.
I'm from the University of Minnesota, and I have a purely superficial question that becomes important when people care. The Running Rebels colors are gray and scarlet, but all your visualizations are blue and gray.
Yeah.
How did you get that past whoever makes the color decisions?
Okay, this is recorded. Should I even say it? I got my undergraduate degree, my master's degree, and I'm working on my PhD. So I've been there for like 7-8 years, and I've never been to a Running Rebels game, not one. So UNLV is a little different than the Midwest and Texas and everywhere else that really loves sports. But we're getting there. We are getting to the point of loving sports. But this was not like an official UNLV. I didn't have to go through the UNLV vetting process to do it, so that's probably why. And I just thought the template looked data-y, so it's pretty. I don't do custom templates, so.
The problem I have is inevitably some people have an idea of what looks good and what doesn't. And it winds up getting into a prolonged discussion about color schemes.
Yeah.
When from my perspective, it's all cosmetic, it's just the data.
Yeah, but when you're trying to put forth a unified front as a university, and now that you have me thinking about it, I'm like nervous. Thanks a lot. I'm like wondering, should I have done that? I don't know. I think in conferences, most conferences have a scheme that you have to follow, so I didn't even think about it. Every other conference I've had, they had a template I had to put in, so I didn't even have a choice in it. So wherever.
I was just going to say, we hired our graphic designer made a mood board for us, so no one could complain about what happened.
I'm from University of Pennsylvania. I have a question about the data framework you mentioned. I wonder how much effort is putting into maintain it, and is it automatically updated if there's any changes?
Yeah, that's a good question. We aligned our update process. We do it every year. And we aligned it with some major survey requirements. So we have our ACRL and IPEDS. These are outside entities that request data from us. And those surveys sometimes change. So our data points would change. So we align our update process with those major surveys. So once a year, we'll look at the surveys, see if anything's changed, talk to the department, see if anything's changed, and make the updates as necessary. It was a huge process at first because so many things were out of date. It hadn't been looked at since like 2013 or something. But now that we keep on top of it every single year, it's a pretty quick process. And it's just a formal, hey, here's your letter, here's all of the data points that apply to your department, has anything changed? And it's a question and they'll answer it. If it's changed, we have our student worker update it. And if it hasn't, we leave it. So formalizing that update process is important. I'm really glad you asked that question. So once a year.
Thank you. This will be my last one. One of the things we're trying to do with Tableau is have our partners be able to use Tableau so they can look at their data dynamically. And you mentioned that you guys have started to get people to adopt Tableau and expand your user base. I want to know what the challenges has been so far doing that.
Oh boy, there's an endless list of challenges with switching, especially for faculty and staff that are not technical or just too busy to learn something. So the biggest challenge is getting them to, moving them away from asking us for the answers and moving them towards looking for the answers on their own. That's hard when people are, and we have to be patient and slow moving with that because people are busy. Liaisons are crazy busy, especially the ones that are just trying to get tenure. They're also publishing and teaching and doing everything. It's exhausting. So our main challenge was we had to learn how to move slow and not get frustrated that everybody's not doing it, but also making it exciting is what really helped us. Like I said, doing that exploratory session. And if somebody requests something or has a question, you would normally just email them back with the response and here's the number you need. We create a dashboard instead and send it to them. And they got really stoked about it. It really was about, it was kind of like getting my kid to eat vegetables. Same exact concept. Make it fun, make it exciting, get people involved. If he helps me cook them, he's more likely to eat them. So if people are in there watching us do it, we do demos. I've done demos for organizations instead of just saying, this is what I created, isn't it awesome? This is what I created, and this is how I did it, and step by step. I was telling somebody yesterday that I take the Penn and Teller approach to doing dashboards. I don't say, look, I'm a magician. I say, this is how I did it, and I show them step by step, and they see how easy it is, and that really creates the buy-in for it. It makes them realize that they can do it. especially if I tell them, I'm just a social worker, I don't know how to do this stuff, they really get into it. So it's about creating buy-in, and it's challenging, and it depends on your department. Do you have server?
Yeah, we have
Okay, good, that makes it a lot easier, because when we have version problems, it's a problem, so.
Probably have time for one or two more questions.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Erin from Michigan State University. I just have a question about publishing some of this data. As you said, it's all publicly available in its raw form anyway, in most cases for public universities. Like when I put things on Tableau Public, there's inevitably people who get upset, like this makes us look bad, our department should look better than this kind of thing. How do you kind of navigate that landscape?
We don't publish it publicly.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Unfortunately, but I'm the one that will push for it, like open access, transparency. I'll push for it, and I'll keep pushing for it. It's a fight we got to keep fighting. But really, policy is basically not to have it public. Like our Ithaca survey results, we published the big giant 112-page report from Ithaca, but we won't publish our dashboards right now. We have to get around university privacy. And universities have a reason to be paranoid and private. They have student data. It's very important. And perception matters, especially if you're state funded. So I understand the hesitancy. You just got to keep fighting the good fight, I guess.
So folks, thanks very much for attending the session this morning. Let's give Ashley a round of applause.